Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you very much for staying after that lovely lunch. I hope you're still awake. Just from virtual reality to MEP engineering and BIM. So I'd like to welcome our panelists here. I think before we start immediately going into BIM, it's probably worth, we have two contractors and we have one client, end user, an independent, right, and also a consultant. I guess in the context of MEP engineering and the work that we normally do, I'd like to say that normally, actually in the region here, most projects are probably quite heavily delayed, over budget generally. That's the issues there. And the delay always blamed, at least we hear, on the MEP engineering. So with the adventure or involvement of BIM, how come we still really struggling with doing the MEP engineering? So I don't know, any of you want to take that up and maybe mention something about why is MEP engineering always the culprit or the perceived culprit in terms of delays on projects?
Well, by nature in the program, MEP comes at the end of the program. And the MEP contractor end up sweeping all the delays that happen through the design change and during construction on the civil side. How BIM could help here? BIM is very important because MEP, you have to fit our equipment as MEP into the building and make sure that they coordinate nicely with the structure and please the architects and the client. And if that's sorted out at the beginning of the project, then it's easy on site rather than the structure is up there and you're trying to squeeze the air handling unit in the plant room and you're coordinating 3-4 times. So that's one side. The other side is off-site manufacturing. And this is where you start working concurrently while civils is happening on site. So you're building off-site, and BIM is a fantastic platform for that because you can develop off-site modules like what we do at BK Gulf, and that's independent from construction. And services arrive in modules and install. But to do that, you have to have design fixed at early stages. Okay, so John, you work for EMAR, that's end user with many different projects. And so the ideal situation for you to have a job delivered in terms of BIM, you will hire AECOM to do the design, perhaps BK Gulf or other to do your MEP through a main contractor. So ideally, are you happy with the way it's split and delivered? Design done by a consultant, construction done by a main contractor with MEP under it, and then if you're really lucky or truly unlucky, you may have an MP, a PMC, and let's say that's Charles. So Charles is your PMC. How does that align? Does that align well in terms of getting the BIM? Who should be developing the BIM model? Are you looking basically to Alexander to do that, or are you looking for Ali or Chris as subcontractors to do the BIM model for you on the MEP? What works well in your experience?
To be honest with you, like the whole industry throughout history has been evolving. And our company is well known by doing a lot of the landmarks in the city, like Burj Khalifa, Opera House that we just finished now, embarking on actually doing Dubai Creek Harbor, bigger and bigger projects under the vision of Dubai's ruler, Sheikh Mohammed. So to answer your question, we've actually looked at doing things in parallel. So we have the traditional way of doing business, which is do it, get it done as quickly as possible, but to the highest standards, world-class standards. And also, we've looked at the life cycle of this installation because most of the developments that we do, we actually manage them ourselves. So as everybody know, the full life cycle of a building or any asset that you build is 80% over the life cycle beyond the construction time. So you spend maybe 10, 20, 30% maximum, but the rest of it is over the life cycle. So what we've done recently is we've introduced BIM in our projects early on. And what we've recently done, and actually with BK Golf, with Autodesk, Trimble, and we've looked at like what we can do on a pilot that we've done on the Opera House, even with CCC also. So we've looked at how is the model that we're doing on the Opera House? We actually had a video to share with everybody, and because of the time constraint, we're not showing it now. But basically what we've done is we've said, okay, let's have this pilot, look at early engagement by everybody, and communication, which I think everybody has been touching on it from early on. We're not looking at a model, we're looking at how do we get the building information? How do we look at it and see how can we use that information to make things better, more efficient, to look at how we can build it more efficient together, and also look at what are the lessons learned that we can even apply it on jobs that are happening in the same time. And this pilot is, we're almost done with the pilot in developing it, but key, as you mentioned, traditional way of doing business is pretty much is going to be evolving, whether everybody likes it or not, but it's also to the advantage, like WhatsApp. Everybody was using WhatsApp. Now we use it in operations, even in quick getting decisions on getting things done. So, and I see technology is an enabler, and our company embraces that. So like anything else, we always have to think outside the box and push the limits. But not only look at BIM as a model, like everybody has been mentioning earlier. It's not a model. It should help you to look at your business needs, support the business needs, and support making things better the next time around, or in parallel in what you're doing. So I hope that answered pretty much like what.
So Chris, you are at TransGulf, on the receiving end of the main contractor, the client, and even the designer at some stages. Yes. So when you're doing your job, you are heavily delayed, and always, I guess you will blame design being late. How much involvement is, I guess, TransGulf, or your experience? Are you set up as a subcontractor to actually be able to develop BIM well, or do you take the model from someone like an AECOM and then you further develop it? How does it actually work? I think it's a bit of mystery. How does that link work together in the industry, and is it effective in your view at the moment, or is it not?
Yeah. Well, with my experience over the last 3 years in the UAE at BK Gulf and now TransGulf, we've always been in a situation where we have received basic BIM models with basic information, which is kind of just an indicative model of what is required. What we found, though, and it's my own opinion, and it's the opinion of us at TransGulf, is that early engagement, as Jean says, is so important, because if you don't have buildability and constructability design built into the initial model, there's going to be rework. And the whole idea of having that BIM is for it to free fall down through the system, okay, and come out in FM. What we have been finding, and what happened in the UK as well, was that perhaps it was resource, I'm not quite sure, but there was a lot of design intent information put into the models, which didn't allow for false ceiling heights, support systems, etc., etc. So the models didn't have true value as a single model. Early involvement by the construction team, building to their standards and with their knowledge, experience, certainly helps to develop the model to a better standard. You can get to an LOD 400, LOD 300 very, very quickly with that input.
That's a bit idealistic, quite frankly. When, okay, AECOM, you have the design for a project for EMR, and you have to hand it over to a main contractor. He's talking about him coming and interfering and working with you, you designing your work out in India or somewhere in global design, and you got to give them a BIM design. Truly, how reality, I don't see any alignment. My experience in the industry here, absolutely broken. The delivery methodology does not actually work efficiently or does not align with the objective of finishing the job well. So in your mind, continue more of the same. Design still has to be an independent party and an independent contractor, or where does BIM fit in terms of also the concept where you're actually doing detailed engineering outside of country rather in country?
Yeah, from design consultants' point of view, is design consultants are now expected to not just to put design information there, but also consider supports for pipes and ceiling supports and maintenance and maybe even FM requirements. But the fee traditionally are still the same. So there is more amount of work expected from design consultants within the same fee to make everybody else's life easier. Well, yes, ideally what I would like to see is the client recognizing that the design consultant is now with the BIM tools will be putting more effort, they will be delivering more quality design, which will be suitable more for construction and will be seamless transfer information to construction and to FM. But then design consultants needs to be, first of all, given the requirements, what is the end use of the model? Is it going to be used by contractors and subcontractors? Because often we put a lot of effort, but then contractors, yes, there are advanced contractors sitting next to me in this room, but they're not all like that, right? So you see some contractors that even you give them the best BIM model in the world, they will just say, oh no, we don't have any BIM capability, forget about that BIM model. You talk to building operators, the same thing. You only see few building operators that know about BIM and have some idea, that it's still very vague idea, and Charles will be the best to talk about that.
So Charles, coming to you now, you've heard everyone. So what do you think, where does BIM fit really best in this context? Where should it, who should deliver it? Who should own the model? And how should it be implemented? What's your experience?
So we come at it from a pretty unique standpoint as an ESCO. Just a quick show of hands in the room. Who knows what energy performance contracting is? Okay, good. At least one person. Okay, so maybe just to frame it a little bit, when we do an energy performance contract, we work in existing buildings. We come into buildings that are very similar to this, hotels, office buildings, residential buildings, and we upgrade and install new equipment to save energy. And when we do that, we pay all the project costs, so there's no cost to the owner. We just get paid a fraction of the savings we generate. So if we don't save energy, we don't get paid. So for us, we just want a BIM model. We don't, to be honest, we don't care who it comes from, any of you guys. Consultant, contractor, owner, please just give us something. But we have never, ever received a BIM model. We've never had an owner, an FM, or anybody else know what BIM is, like Alex said. So what we do when we go into a building is we build them from scratch. We build as-built BIM models from the as-built drawings, from our site surveys, because we need that to successfully deliver our projects. It's not something the owners ask for. It's not something that we get. And then we use it through the life cycle of our 5 to 10 year contracts to operate and do BIM for FM. But what we find, the bigger problem is everyone talks about FM, BIM for FM, who owns the model. Everyone wants it for the life cycle because that's where the value is. But what we found is there isn't a software solution in the market that handles everything that we need. So what we've been forced to do is basically develop it ourselves. So piece together various aspects of dashboards and linking the BMS and the cloud-based monitoring and the drawings and everything else into one to use it in our scenario, which is unique as the designer, contractor, operator, and financer of the project. So like I said, we just want a model. We don't care where it comes from. It doesn't even have to be that good a quality, to be honest. You can have as much or as little information. Just something is better than nothing because we build them all from scratch.
Sure. Maybe go to Chris and Ali as contractors in MEP. Normally on an MEP job, the majority of the project value is in material, let's say probably 60% or so. Then you have labor, that's where you lose your shirt, probably 15%. If you're lucky, you get to 30% of the job. And then you have your prelims to manage the job. And unfortunately, with delays, you're not making much money on the labor, nor are you making money on your preliminaries. So it's a flawed model in a way. With BIM coming in, would you actually trust BIM being developed by the designer, or would you rather do it yourself, and that becomes something that you do to cut your time? Because I hear about productivity, prefabrication, modular, and quite frankly, how would the designer know that at the beginning of the job when communication is pretty tough generally? So how would you see it? If you were offered a design build or an EPCM contract, you do the engineering, you own the BIM model, would you do it?
Yeah, I'll go first. We're doing actually a design and build project in Jabal Ali, and we're working with AECOM there as our designers. And that particular job, the client didn't ask for a BIM model. However, we went ahead ourselves with the BIM model. And that job, it's mainly infrastructure. There are not many opportunities for building services off-site fabrication. However, the BIM model gives us another benefit, which is you look at the commercial part. You can do quicker quantity takeoffs and reduce waste. You know, instead of a supervisor ordering and say, oh, I'd order a little bit extra, and you have this control, as well as the visualization and coordination. So that's the BIM side, and we work in design and build, and that's optimum way of working. But in the traditional procurement, I think to utilize BIM properly, all parties, they need to put their shields down and focus on the goal. And on the Opera House, we're working with Atkins, and we had weekly review of the BIM model. And that was, Atkins had their own BIM model, but when we, on construction stage, we we had to produce our own MEP model, which is not the most efficient way of BIM model development. However, contractually, this is what we had to do. But the BIM was the platform for collaboration in the Opera House. So, you know, BIM has been promising for a long time, but it's now delivering. You know, we deliver the Opera House collaboratively, I would say, and John here would comment on that.
And I think like what you mentioned earlier, rather than the traditional way, which is evolving now, this is one of the things that we put in as a highlight of lessons learned. You know, rather than have the consultant, let's say, prepare a BIM model or early stage BIM model, and then turn it over, tender it, and have a contractor come and start all over again. Maybe engage everybody early on and look at it as the end in sight. What is it that you're trying to achieve? And then work on it and find out. Rather, you will save time, you will lower the assumptions, and you'll make sure everybody's working on the same page. Obviously, with leaving every stakeholder with their responsibilities, because obviously it depends on the project. If it's a design bid build or a design build, you will need to make sure that each one is within its own parameter. But like what Ali was mentioning, working together collaboratively, because if you build it like a building, if your foundation is strong, then everything will be okay, you know, as if you build it within that parameter. And that, I think, is one of the big lessons learned that we've learned from the pilot. Rather than do it and then have a contractor come back and then start all over again, and then have assumptions and trying to see how you can marry it together, is actually work together early on.
So you talked about collaboration. So if you, Alex, in terms of collaboration and BIM is used as an enabling tool for collaboration, how do you see that working? Does that work?
Yeah, I see it works very well as a collaboration tool. Well, collaboration, there is a number of collaboration happening. Let's say if we're talking about collaboration during design, it could be collaboration between multiple design teams sitting in different offices or even in different regions. Design coordination would be also part of the collaboration platform, and it definitely helps us a lot coordinating design, getting multiple disciplines merged together in one model. Then when we're talking collaboration during construction between multiple parties, presenting our design to the building owner to visualize the design, that's also collaboration. Collaboration during construction to present that model as a progress model, 4D model, 5D model. So yeah, definitely there is a lot of collaboration that enabled by BIM.
Charles, in terms of BIM accreditation, where do we stand in the industry? Is that something you're familiar with?
No, to be honest, not familiar with it.
Anybody from the panel in terms of?
Yeah, we worked. We started our journey with BIM in 2013, and initially we started obviously with people, technology. Then end of last year we started talking to British Standard Institution about accreditation, and in August this year we became accredited by BSI, and that is to ensure that we have, you know, PAS 1192 system in the business, and that's accredited independently, and that's not the goal. It's not a certificate that we put on the wall, but it's to make sure that this is a step going forward, and we have the right processes in place to talk out to our customers in the BIM environment and our supply chain, because supply chain management for MEP contractors is really important, because we are as good as our supply chain. We buy plant, we buy equipment, we don't manufacture them, we install them, we engineer them.
Yeah.
So this is why we have to have the right process in place to ensure customer satisfaction, but at the same time to integrate with the designers and supply chain. Yeah.
Yeah. So how do you deal actually with translating a good BIM model that's designed properly to the actual field activity on the site. So when you have laborers that may not be very familiar with that kind of technology, is that a challenge, you think? Or
Yeah, what we did was we embarked, when I joined Al Nabuda, we embarked on a BIM project that was an Al Nabuda construction project, buildings, and Transgulf, part of Al Nabuda. So we had total control over what we were developing and how we were going to develop it. We pride ourselves in making sure I've got a really good BIM team. You know, every company needs a BIM guru in their team. And as long as you've got that person there to set up the base, to make sure that everything's working, to make sure that the families are correct and it's flawless, we've created a model that we are really comfortable with and we know that works. Okay. Just going back to my earlier question, when I mentioned about models not coming through from the consultants, just recently in the last 3-4 months, we've been looking at models coming through on Museum of the Future, Maastricht Bank, which appear to be really good models. Okay, so it seems like that the consultants are definitely moving in that direction to improve their models. What we've done further is we now invested. You mentioned about losing your shirts on when you're on site. So we've invested quite heavily on Trimble, on the Trimble Total Station. We've invested in Siskiyou product to enhance Revit and the support systems. And we know that when we send that information to site for the pointing of all the brackets and support systems, it's going to work. We've done trials, we've proved it. And that is part of the benefit for us. So far, it's the biggest benefit that we are actually getting. We're actually being able to use the model effectively on site. We've changed the mentality. We picked up some junior engineers, going back to the engineering. We picked up some junior engineers. We put them onto the training course, and they are thriving on it. They just love it. Instead of having 10 guys with ladders walking around marking, they've now got a little green light that they go and point at, and big benefit for us from BIM.
Charles, in terms of efficient designs for building, installations, facilities, when these guys are designing a system and doing BIM, what would you be looking for? What sort of the points to look for in terms of providing at the end an energy efficient design for a facility?
Yeah, so obviously code and DM green code is always a big one, and latest standards for efficient design, and I think within the BIM space and realm for us for energy efficient design is having that information in there. And I know there's a big divide between the consultant's model and the contractor's model, because MEP engineers in their model need to know calculations, flow rates, heating loads, whereas contractors need to know model numbers and makes and sizes and capacities. So for us, the more information, the better in general. Because when we need to operate a building for 5 or 10 years and we use that model, it's important for us to have as much information we can have earlier, because anything we don't have either in a model or in a drawing means we have to go to site and collect it during our energy audit. So in an ideal world, we would love to get handed a perfect as-built BIM model from the owner, and to be able to go in from day one, be able to click on any major plant and know exactly what it is and what it's been doing. Because ultimately that's what we build and create, or we need to operate the facility. So the more valuable information, the better.
But do you actually get involved more in specifying some of the material, some of the equipment, making sure the material used helps in the efficiency? So it's efficiency, energy efficiency by design rather than by
we wish.
measurement towards the end.
No one wants to pay for that service.
Yeah,
we
no one
try.
wants to pay for that.
I mean, we do consulting, BIM consulting, BMS controls, cloud-based analytics, energy modeling consulting, design reviews. But usually developers and owners don't care to pay for that service up front. They just want to pay the least amount of money and get it done as fast as possible. So we're there to fix it afterwards, after it's been losing them money for 20 years or 5 years, and then it costs them 4 times more.
So now Charles says client wants to do it in the cheapest possible way and gets it done as fast as possible. So guys, isn't BIM more expensive? And maybe that's why there's hesitation.
If I comment on what you said, Charles, I think in collaboration, and you look at win-win, if you have services or if you have a know-how, like what we were saying early on, awareness, it's not about just building a BIM model. It's about building a platform or a system. So, but if there's awareness, giving the owner options early on, everybody will be, it's win-win for everybody. For the owner, for the occupants of the buildings, for the designers, because they don't have to come back and redesign it over and over, because they will have early on. So I think like a collaboration early on is a big win-win-win for
Agreed,
everybody. So you
agreed.
don't have to come back after the job is done and start retrofitting it. And I think this is probably like the summit here or the forum. It gives like the platform for people to communicate, but also to share ideas and think outside the box. Maybe the designer can bring in maybe ideas from what you do, or like other companies that do it, and then maybe early on for the owner present, you have option A, B, C, D. Each one of these options might have cost early on, but over the life cycle of the building might be a lot cheaper. We do internal benchmarking, and we have actually our operations team work closely with the design and the development. So if things, let's say we want to improve on them, the best thing to do is to look at the different business units and what they've been using, and then work internally in it.
Yeah, but you guys are also one of the highest quality clients. So you're a very unique case. There's a lot of others that don't do that, or they don't get to close the life cycle because they don't have the operations. But we know you guys are very good at that.
I think. Chris, you
Yeah, I
wanna say
just got.
something?
I'm working at the moment on our probably what I believe is the first proper BIM job in the UAE, and it's the Maktoum Airport expansion on AMR with Alec, and we found that DAP and DAR have invested upfront a lot of money in preparing the models, the as-built models, the existing models, the as-built models, and their own design models to give us an effort to move forward. And the benefits in the weekly site meetings that we go to are really becoming apparent. So yeah, there definitely is. But it's client-driven again.
Yeah, sure. Actually, I'll move to take a couple of questions before we wrap up from the audience. Any questions for our panelists? Matthew, there, please.
Did the use of BIM on the Opera House project enable anything which perhaps wouldn't have been possible if it hadn't been used?
I can answer that if you'd like me to. We had instances with architecture. We just couldn't fit the services into particular areas on the Opera House, and we only because of the BIM, because we had evidence that we needed more space, we were actually able to get them to change their design. Otherwise, if in 2D, you would never have seen it. So, and that didn't only appear in one place, it appeared in quite a number of places. But we caught it early. There was no extra additional cost to the client. We caught it early, and it did work.
One additional benefit to BIM, which again, like we had the video, is it's not a traditional building, the Opera House. You have a lot of different services in it that are non-traditional. You have also the use of the building. The building is not just for opera. We have like multiple use for it. So there's a lot of like equipment that have been installed in it, non-traditional. So using the BIM model not only helped us in building it and the coordination, because like some people are visual, like from everybody around here. Some are number oriented, some visual, some are just the numbers on it. So what we've done is we've actually used the model to help everybody visualize and see how they can build it. And it helps us also long term to maintain it.
Any other questions? A gentleman over there, please.
Thank you. This is Nikki. I'm a QS. I have a question for Jean. I'm not sure if EMAR thought about it so far, but are you at a corporate level considering integrated project delivery on future projects?
Okay, again, the pilot that we looked at, it's we didn't look at just looking at what's the traditional way of doing things. We've looked at how can we go beyond that, go to, let's say we have a project being prepared to finishing the project, and once it's finished, it's already built into a CAFM system. So that's on the operational side. But also, like to answer your question, we've looked at also this, how do we source things? And how we look like big picture as economies of scale on things that we have. But again, the Opera House is unique. We're not building 10 different Opera Houses. So if we're building like high-rise buildings or hotels or malls or any of the different like businesses that we're into, this is something that we're looking at. Not just looking at the model, just to give it to us as an as-built. How do we keep that data? And what do we use out of that data? So.
Maybe just a last question there at the back, please. And then we'll wrap up after
Okay.
that.
Yeah, so in an environment where not all the stakeholders are ready to implement BIM, for example, the MEP consultant is not using BIM, but the architect does, or the contractor is not following up their shop drawings in BIM, but the architect did. So is it still beneficial from the client's point of view to still implement BIM?
I can help you on that one. On that same project at Mactoum, we're working with Siemens, and their software package is not 100% interoperable with Revit, and they have now changed from their standard system and are developing the complete model in Revit on the BHS system. So again, it's client driven. They're saying we want this other IFCs that work, or we want to work in a common environment. And a big supply chain member like Siemens is actually moving in that direction. The same is happening with the car shade people, that they're also starting to develop their shop drawings from a Revit or a Bentley product. So it is moving in that direction.
Okay. Well, I think just a final question before we wrap up really quickly. Chris, in this challenging construction environment at the moment, BIM technology will save the day for you?
Definitely, definitely. Wouldn't be anywhere without it.
Ali, how do you see the next 2 years in the business here?
I think BIM has to move to site now, because it's been like so far white collar people. Now it has to move to site, and that has to be the social responsibility of BIM. We need to see how we can use things like 3D scanners on site. So when we hand over an as-built BIM model, it's really as-built model. It's not just nice pictures, because it's not built as it was supposed to be built.
John, as an end user, do you see
I
it to be
agree.
the future?
And another thing is just drop the M at the end. It's building information and build a system. You know, it has to be a system.
Yeah.
It cannot just be user software. It's not. Let the technology help us support the business needs. This is pretty much where it should be heading.
Alex?
Yeah, for AECOM,
just
BIM
going
is
forward?
already business as usual for a number of years. It's just a matter of taking it to the next level and developing better models and manage information better.
Yeah. And Charles, operationally, maintenance-wise, that's the main sort of purpose at the end?
Yeah, we're going to continue to push the envelope and develop and use it for the long life cycle cost, because that's where the real value lies, and find the right solution. And really, we think that BIM is kind of the linchpin of smart cities. It links kind of design and construction with operation into a greater GIS and smart cities. So it is the future of buildings.
Thank you. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you.